Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. So as you can tell by the title, we are going to be talking about my best books of 2022. Yes, it's late, but you know what? Better late than never. I have 14 books on my sort of best books of 2022. And I have one honourable mention. But because some of these books I have already spoken about before, I'm not going to go into basically detail about all of them. So basically what we're looking at here is books that I have rated 4 and 5 stars. In 2022, I believe I read 90 books, so to have 14 that were rated 4 or 5 stars really just makes me feel like I fucking hate reading. Honestly, I was gonna title one of my reading vlogs like, do I hate reading? Honestly, I was at a point where I was like, do I even like this anymore? And like, I remember I rated a book 3 stars. And one of my colleagues is like, Sandra, like, harsh. And I'm just like, yeah, I feel like harsh, but also I feel like 3 stars is, I liked it. It didn't blow me away or anything like that. But honestly, it just made me think like, do I even like reading that I'm giving so many books 3 stars? But anyway, these are all books that I rated 4 or 5 stars, and like I said, I read 90 books last year. So I am going to talk about these books in the order that I read them in. So what I will do perhaps maybe here, I don't know if I should do it here because then you'd have to like freeze frame. I guess during the time that I'm talking it can be fine. But I will categorize the books in terms of the books that got 5 stars and the books that got 4 stars. Obviously as I'm going through the video I will also say as well, but just so you can get that full overview. My first 4-star read was given to a book in January, and last year I decided to reread the Dark Eden trilogy because I absolutely loved the first book when I read it last year, and then was subsequently disappointed by the other 2, but I was like, let me give it another go, mainly because I just wanted to go back into that Dark Eden world. I believe I gave it 4 stars the first time I read it, I believe, and then this time around it still got another 4 stars. But I have done a whole review video for the 3 books in that trilogy. All I'm going to say here is that it's a sci-fi trilogy, the first book focusing on the sort of beginnings, not even really the beginnings, it's kind of moved on 100 years, of the ancestors of 2 people who were stranded on a planet, and then the following 2 books expand on that, so you're sort of taken further into the timeline of this world, and you're just seeing how their civilization develops. Absolutely amazing. Go and watch my review video because I talk about it in depth so much more. The next 4-star read came through a poetry collection, which was The Sacraments of Bodies, which I read in February. Again, I have already done a review video about this. Well, it's a wrap-up video. It was in my February wrap-up, so I would just direct you to that. I was given that as a gift, and I really like the poetry collection. Obviously, I talk about it more in the wrap-up, but I thought it was beautifully, beautifully written, and I want to get more. It's part of a collection, like an African chapbook kind of collection or something like that. I don't know if it's a chapbook actually, it's just a collection, which I'd had my eye on for so long, and then I got given that as a gift, and that really should have prompted me to pick up more. It didn't, but go and watch that video to see what I thought of it. In March, I reread The Republic of Motherhood by Liz Berry. I feel like I read this twice, so 3 times at this point. I have spoken about this book in a video in 2019, and I still really love it. I will talk about this collection a little bit more in depth because I think I said this in my 2019 video, but the first poem is the title of the collection, and it is one of the strongest poems in that whole collection, but just one of the most beautiful poems I have ever read. I was going to say ever met. And it is called The Republic of Motherhood, and it is about entering into motherhood and sort of all the things that come with that. And I don't know if this is the case for everyone, but I feel like I do, as the point in my life that I am and the people that I follow, and sometimes things that are on my kind of like, I won't say For You page, but that's TikTok, but you know what I mean in terms of Instagram. You do get to see a lot of things around birth, and people are like how this stuff is not easy and whatnot. And, you know, Republic of Motherhood is essentially that, but it's much more poetic. You know, she talks about things of, you know, waiting in line for things because now you're waiting in line to like buy milk or buy stuff like that, whereas your grocery shopping would be a lot different if you didn't have kids. That sounds so like small and not interesting, but she makes every single line in that poem count. It's beautiful. And the rest of the collection is about motherhood. It is about being, I think she's from the north, so somewhere like about being northern, and her poems feature some of the twang from, I guess, the area that she is from. So there is a little glossary in the back. I think it's only about like, I want to say max 10 words or something like that. It never takes away from your enjoyment of the collection, but it is such a beautiful collection. Like, she is just a complete wordsmith. Like, I just read all the poems back and I'm just in awe. The way she talks about nature, the way she talks about life, I'm just absolutely blown away. In April, I read The Confessions of Fanny Langton. I gave this 4 stars. I absolutely love this book. Like, I have seen this book around so much, and I am kind of gutted that I just ignored it because I was like, it's historical fiction, I will not like it. It is historical fiction and I freaking loved it. Like, it is historical fiction wrapped in with a bit of mystery, wrapped in with a bit of I don't know what the other thing is that I'm looking for, but it focuses on a black woman named Fanny Langton. This book has so many layers and so many stories in it. It is wonderfully crafted. Like, I don't think I'll ever find a book like this again, and if anyone knows of a similar book to this, please write it in the comments, because I want to read more like this, because I thought this was fantastic. So this opens with like Franny being on trial for the murder of, so I believe she was a maid in this house, the murder of the two people in that house, so it's a man and a wife. And so we're going through the sort of present day trial of that, but we're also having all these flashbacks to like Franny's life, so where she actually came from and how she came to be this maid. And that's a whole story in itself, her being a young girl in Jamaica and how she ends up there. Like, I've just said that, but there's a whole story there that like comes towards the end. None of it is rushed or anything like that, but it's just the whole building blocks of that story, and that in itself is so graphic. Think of, what am I thinking of? I had an absolute brain blank there, but think of Henrietta Lacks and the testing on black bodies without consent. You know, and just like white people being in Jamaica on plantations and just some of the operations that they might have been running. But there is so much depth to the story. So that's like in her past, and that, you know, unravels throughout the story, her past. Then we think of how we get told of how she comes to London, some of the things that she's doing in London, and then what actually happens in that house. So it's brilliant. There's so much in there about the history and the, you know, the abuse that's inflicted on black bodies. But then there's talk of London during the 1800s and what was going on there. There's like sapphic romance in here. This book has everything. Well, it doesn't have everything, obviously, but it has so much, and yet it doesn't feel overdone. It is so beautifully crafted that I was just like, wow, this is fantastic. Why did no one tell me about this? Even though I've seen plenty of people talk about this and just kind of zoned out every single time. So another book that I read in April, which got 4 stars, so maybe April was my best reading month and then it just all went downhill from then, was The Confessions of Fanny Langton. Again, a book that had much more in it than I expected. And I said this in my January vlog, which has just gone up, but I think one of the things to me in terms of enjoyment that boosts my enjoyment of a book definitely is if I read it expecting it to be the standard X and then it surpasses those expectations. It has a little bit more of a twist to it, and then I'm just like, oh, actually this is a brilliant book. So The Confessions of Fanny Langton is definitely billed as a mystery on Agatha Christie. So during Agatha Christie's life, for 10 or 11 days, I believe it's 10, she just disappeared, and no one really knows, like, till this day, like, where she went, what happened, where she was, and all that sort of stuff. So this book has taken that real life happening, and this author has built a story around it. And I believe, because I read around it, I just wanted to see if the author was like a big Agatha Christie fan. She isn't. She just heard about this story and then decided to craft something around it, which I think is lovely, because I think actually there are so many people who are huge Agatha Christie fans that could have also done this, but I don't know if they would have tried to like solve it themselves and then put that into the story, whereas she was just inspired by it, wasn't really that much of a huge fan, and decided to write this. So this is about Nan O'Dear, and to give you some backstory, Agatha Christie was married to a man named Archie, and he cheated on her with a woman named Nan. I don't know if that's actually the real woman's name, but Nan O'Dear is the mistress of Archie, who is Agatha Christie's husband. So in this, we are introduced to Nan O'Dear, who has like a bit of a secret. She has a secret. Obviously she's with Archie, and she really wants to basically be Archie's main gal. Like, she's trying to get Agatha out of the way. And actually when the book opens up, they are friends. They know of each other, because like Agatha goes to Archie's office, and like obviously Nan is like one of the secretaries there or whatever. And then begins the actual story. In this book, Agatha does disappear, and we're told a lot of this book, I feel like every single aspect actually is told from Nan's point of view. And there is a whole backstory with Nan as well, so it very much isn't about solving a mystery or solving where Agatha Christie went during this time, because it does touch on those bits, but we're following Nan's story and why she so badly wants into Archie's life, because there's actually something that she wants more, and it's not Archie. Archie is just a means of getting there. So we're dealing with a sort of present day of like, what is Nan O'Dear doing? There is also this backstory of her life in Ireland and some of the things that she went through. Weirdly enough, at the time that I was reading this book, I also read Baby Love by Jacqueline Wilson, which touches on one of the subjects that this book also touches on, and that is to do with women in Ireland having to give away their child when they were young. And that is also what this book delves into. It has so much more in it than just the disappearance of Agatha Christie, and I can see for people who are interested in that why this book can be quite divisive, because it's like, well, some people just want to try and think of what that reimagining of what she did during that time is like, and other people, I guess, are just like me, who are just happy to read around it because they don't really care, because this does not in any way, shape or form really tell you what Agatha Christie was doing. I mean, she imagines a little bit of it, but that's not the main focal point of the story. And then what's really nice about this is there's a present day, there's the past, but then in the present day as well we get a little murder mystery, which I thought was just a really nice little touch, a nice nod, because I didn't expect that to happen. It had really good elements of the genre that Agatha Christie writes in, but then also adding a bit of depth to it, and I guess adding the author's own touch to it, and writing about some really poignant topics to make it its own story. But also to point out, I did do a written review of this because this was a NetGalley ARC, so I will leave the link to my Goodreads review below, and perhaps that will be a bit more in-depth and concise. I just had to change the battery, but the next 4-star read again goes to the month of April, and that is Tell Me the Truth About Love. Again, this was a NetGalley ARC, so I do have a written review of this. Do I? Yeah, I did write that review, yeah. Susanna is a couples counsellor, and in this she shares essentially 13 stories, I guess, of patients that come to see her. I assume, as with most of these books, they're always an amalgamation of patients, not just based on one character. And through doing this, you get to see the different relationship issues that they have. And what's so nice about this collection is, in a way, how tender she is with the process of how like difficult love is and how it can be so hard to see each other's point of view. But what I really liked about this is she didn't just feature the stories where it was just like, and then I solved all their problems and they lived happily ever after. Some of these couples do not remain together. Some of these couples do not come back to therapy, and I like that she included that, because I think the reality is that couples therapy is not going to solve everything for you. But despite, you know, if some of these couples don't come back, she takes you through that journey with them. And what she also does is like weave in aspects of her experience of being a counsellor. So, you know, like just really basic things of like when counselling is likely to be more popular, and just, you know, what she has learned through seeing different couples over the years. So it is when I say she weaves it in, I don't think it's very heavy-handed. A lot of the focus definitely is on the couples, the lessons you're learning and things like that, but she really allows you to take a step back and be with her when she's talking about these couples, rather than being like with those couples. I don't know if that makes sense, but I really feel like you got the sense that you were in the room with them, but you were her, and you were sort of seeing both sides, and you were able to observe and see how she came to these different conclusions. I think she just writes with such a wisdom, and I imagine that obviously has come from her years of just being a couples counsellor. But I thought it was really beautiful. And it's beautiful because it sheds light on how vulnerable people feel in couples, and how even though we're adults, how much of our childhood wounds make things so much more difficult for us. And even if you have kids, because some of these people have kids, so it's about like, how can we be better parents, how can we be better co-parents, even if you have kids, like how some of those wounds are still imprinted in you, or how they're coming up because you're having children, or because you're having conflict in your relationship, and how, like, you know, having children hasn't negated that at all. If anything, gets brought to the forefront. So I really thought it was a really tender exploration of love and the sort of difficulties people have in finding that, keeping that, sustaining that, sustaining, all the same words. But yeah, it was a really, really beautiful book. So yeah, like I said, I also have a written review of this one. But yeah, it seems April was my top month for like 4-star books. That's 3 4-star books in April. So let's move on to July, where my next 4-star read was Difficult Mothers, Adult Daughters. I have already done a full review. I say full review again. I've done a wrap up of this in one of my recent reads videos last year, so I will link you to that. I listened to this as an audiobook, and I thought it was a great thing to listen to. I generally think it's a really good resource if you are someone that has a difficult mother-daughter relationship. My second 5-star read of the year goes to Becoming the One, which I feel like I'm talking about in loads of videos, but I think it's probably perhaps only been like 2 or 3. But I read it for the first time last year, and I reread it again towards the end of last year and finished it at the beginning of January. This is a non-fiction book, and again, I'm not going to talk on it too much because I will direct you to those 2 videos where I've done deeper reviews of them. But it is by Shalina, I believe is how you pronounce her name, who is the founder of Rising Women. It's a non-fiction book about finding sort of purpose and love within yourself, and how that then reflects into sort of relationships, like romantic relationships, but also relationships with your parents, friendships, etc, etc. Highly recommend, and yeah, I will leave links to those 2 videos where I talk about it below. My next 5 stars goes to a poetry collection, and that is Granite Heart. I feel like I haven't put up any of the books in my hand, because these books are all sort of around my bedroom. I just can be asked to get them. But this was a poetry collection that I bought when I had the poet read from this collection, maybe mid last year, I don't know. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, I have a video talking about the collection and just reviewing some of the poems and just talking about the ones that I really like, so I will direct your attention to that instead. And so we had another 5-star book for September, and that is The Body Keeps the Score. I feel like this is a book that so many people freaking love. Like, if you're in that sort of healing wellness space, you just absolutely love this book, and I 100% get it. The beginning threw me off a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, because I don't know why we were making excuses for someone who massacred children in another country and now he has PTSD. I hope you do, because what you did was horrible. But nonetheless, this book talks about trauma in the body, and how throughout the years of any sort of trauma that you experience, that stays in your body. And I don't know if anyone has watched the recent Knives Out, the Glass Onion, when Benoit, is that his name in the thing? I've completely forgotten his name in the show. Christian Blanc? Yeah, that's it. When he's in the bathroom in the rich person's house, the front cover of The Body Keeps the Score, that painting is in the bathroom, and I was like, I 100% recognise that, and I know exactly where that's from. I forgot what I was saying about The Body Keeps, but yeah, it talks about trauma in the body. And he basically has loads of sections at the front which is talking about case studies and like research and all these sorts of things, and not gonna lie, it is a little bit dull. I see why it's there, but a little bit dull to the average reader, but that's fine. I got through it, all good. And then I feel like the second half talks about like different modalities and different therapies that you can use to sort of I was gonna say unwind. It's not about relaxation, but sort of bring these things to the forefront, and just different strategies for coping essentially. And I believe they're about like up to 10, which I think is just so nice, because they're really practical things that you can do, and I really appreciate that, because it ranges from like things like yoga, and I know that yoga gets prescribed like all the time for a lot of things, but yoga can be so beneficial in so many ways. But one of the things that I took away from this, because I've been practicing yoga for such a long time, like on and off, but it's not more about the practice. So even when I say yoga, I really mean like asanas, because that's one aspect of yoga. So even that aspect of the movement, it is really not about can you do these amazing poses. And I know yoga teachers always say that when you're in classes, it's not about that, but it really is feel your body, like feel yourself in your body. Sometimes you tend to move through poses just being like, I've got to get to the next one, I've got to get to the next one. But sometimes when you're someone who has experienced trauma, or any sort of like sexual trauma, or you know, like violence and things like that, you are scared to feel aspects of your body. And when it comes to yoga, you really should be tuning into all aspects of your body and how your body is moving through poses, rather than just trying to move into the next one. I feel like I explained that really badly, but reading a section in that book, it really clicked for me about how much more useful my yoga practice could be for me than just thinking of exercise, or oh, this is going to calm me down. But he recommends things like EDMR therapy, internal family systems, improv, so many different things, because he talks about the way in which that goes against kind of the trauma in your body that you would have experienced, and how like basically that can help you. I feel like you have to read the book obviously to get the full benefits of how these things can be so beneficial, but it was really nice to see some sort of like evidence, or just have a book give you a range of modalities or practices that you can use to trial to see if it can help you, because that's one of the things he says as well, that it's not a case of this thing is going to fix you. One thing might not work for you, it might work for someone else, and it really is about trying those things and seeing what happens. So, you know, somatic therapy is in there and things like that. So I thought it was a really great book, and I can definitely see why the wellness babes have like really been on this, because it's a really fantastic resource, and I heavily encourage people to pick it up. So another book I read in September, is actually a manga, is My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness. Why did I read this? It was for the Reading Around the World project, and I think that month was Japan. but I do talk about this in depth in another video, so I will link you to that video. I feel at this point I might have run out of card space, so I'm going to make sure everything is linked in the description box below. So in September I also read The Merciless Ones by Namina Fauna, and I gave that 4 stars. For context, I gave my lesbian experience with loneliness 4 stars as well. So I think that actually makes September the best reading one, but yes. So I read the second in the series by Namina Fauna. I, again, really enjoyed this one. Again, I already talked about this in one of my reading vlogs, so I will be linking you to that one. But I cannot wait to see what the series does, because I think it's gone from a very strong sense of violence against women to it's going somewhere else, and I'm intrigued to just see what happens. I don't mind the shift, and I still think, I say this in that video, but she definitely paced the second book a lot better than she paced the first book. Because in the first book, a lot of things kind of were rushed and a lot of things happen off page. And in this one, she doesn't do that. She seems to rectify a lot of that. So I thought that was really good. So we are finally into October, where I read 2 books that, well, I believe they're out now, but they were both NetGalley arcs and both books that I gave 4 stars. So the first is Someday Maybe, which was just such a stunning read. This book is about Eve, and Eve loses her husband Quentin. He kills himself, and that is how the book opens up, and it's also just on the back page of the book. And I believe I have spoken about this in another video, in my NetGalley video, where I talk about what's on my NetGalley shelf. So again, this is one that I will link you to, but I thought this was just such a stunning read. Like it was so poetic despite the circumstances we were reading about, and I really felt like Eve's grief. And I think sometimes with books like this, of course you're feeling the character's grief, but you're also thinking, how would I feel if I was in that situation? Because that could happen to anyone. In Eve's situation, it's not like he was displaying any symptoms of being suicidal or anything like that. It just happened. So you just kind of look at the character's story, but also think about like how you would react. And I liked this so much from the angle of her Nigerian parents and, you know, her family coming around her, but then also just the day-to-day grind of like, well, as the days go by, people expect you to get over this, and how does she deal with that? But it is such a wonderful story full of just grief, but growth and learning, and then I guess taking on that next part of your life now that sort of that chapter of your life is closed. And it is a really well-rounded story in the sense that you still get the love story, because you're getting the flashbacks of how Eve and Quentin got together, and I thought that was also really stunning. So the final book, well, it's not the final one, I have one honourable mention to come, but like I said, the other 4-star read was One for Sorrow, Two for Joy. Oh my god, I keep saying this, but I am going to do a video on this, and now another book which is just completely mammy, because I thought they were absolutely beautiful. One for Sorrow, Two for Joy is about Stella, and it is about her, well, how she develops OCD. So One for Sorrow, Two for Joy, if you don't know, is the nursery rhyme for like seeing magpies. So you see one magpie, it's one for sorrow, two for joy, three for a girl, four for a boy. It's really weird that I know this, but there was a friend that always used to see magpies and always used to make me like do that with her, so that's why it's stuck in my head. I remember someone else saying something about magpies, and I was like saying the rhyme, they're like, how do you know that? And I'm just like, yeah, that's how I know. I don't know what 5 and 6 mean, in all fairness. So in a sense, it's that one for sorrow, two for joy. If she sees like 2 magpies, then she's like, right, great, like my day's going to be good, like today's not going to be as bad. Stella's life is dominated by violence of her really angry father, and as you read the book, it's such a weird fucking split that like she has a brother and he gets none of that. He gets none of that violence. All of that is directed towards her. So it does focus on her childhood and then her teenage years, and then something happens to her dad, and then like sort of it goes on with her life as she grows into an adult in her 20s and 30s. But what it explores is the effects of that trauma on Stella's life as she becomes someone who is free from all that violence. Like, who does she become? And in a way, she's sort of like, she's very outwardly successful, and inwardly, I guess up to a point, is very successful as well, until like she isn't, and she starts to spiral because of the not dealing with any of that trauma that she faces. So it is a book that explores trauma. It is a book that explores the impact of violence, of neglect on your life, and how that pans out as you move through life without having developed the skills to think that you're a good person and that those things shouldn't have happened to you. So it really later in life is about dealing with dating, jobs, trusting people, all those sorts of things. And I thought it was just so wonderfully done. At certain points in the book, I was just crying because I was just like, I relate to this so much. But beyond that, it just has so much hope in the story. But I just thought it was so realistic, like in terms of just Stella's actual journey and how at some point she would crumble, because why wouldn't she when she doesn't have those foundations in place to deal with what has happened to her, and then subsequently deal with anything in life like further down the line when it kind of mirrors stuff that happened in her childhood. So I honestly thought it was such a touching, tender book, and I am so glad that I requested it. But yes, I promise I will do a deeper dive of this book in that video. That is definitely coming. So my honourable mention for this video is Milkfed. I don't think I've been saying any of the authors' names in this, but anyway, it's Milkfed by Melissa Broder, I believe. I gave this 3 stars, but I think I also gave the Pisces 3 stars, and I have to say, reading both of her books, they have both been not what I expected, have been so wacky, so wild, so grotesque that I just, in some way, really like them. Like, I thought of all the books that I gave 3 stars to, and I was like, this book was just... But it doesn't get 4 or 5 stars for me, but I do think it's wild, it's wacky, it's funny, it has like just so much funny thoughts that you're just like, I kind of think like that, or oh girl, you're a little bit weird. And I honestly just think, I don't know, in a way it's a bit of a breath of fresh air. It is about a girl, I think she's like 25, 24 or something like that, and she is sort of battling like with an eating disorder, and in the beginning of the book, like her therapist is basically like, maybe you need to like not talk to your mum. That's kind of where the Milkfed kind of thing comes from. But she meets this other girl who is also Jewish, and this girl is a bigger girl than her, and this girl likes food, and obviously Miriam is someone struggling with an eating disorder, specifically anorexia, I believe. Yeah, I think it is. And so it's that sort of disjointedness of that, and you know, the other girl is happy to like feed her, be like encouraging her to eat stuff, not because she knows anything like that, but because she just has that vitality for life where she is well loved, she doesn't really focus on her weight and things like that. And it's just that aspect of being loved, of being fed, but of just that freedom as well from food. There's more to it than that, but just because it's an honourable mention, I will go as far to give it that. My memory card is about to be very full, so thank you so much for watching this video. I know it was a bit long and some of the reviews are pointing you to other videos, but I do encourage you to watch them if you're in any way, shape or form interested in my thoughts about these books. I hope 2023 will be a better reading year. Maybe at some point I will do 2022 stats, but for the record, this was my overall rating for books that I read in 2022. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in another video. Bye.